Aquí, ya tú sabes.
Yeah, pues so, Jorge, I'm bringing you here because we are talking about spirituality and also about language, and we have been having conversations. And today we are going to focus more in the changing nature of our current understanding of the Taino spirituality and the need to remain flexible to the changes as the linguistic research emerges, because as we have talked, it's like we are doing what we are doing in the Taino spirituality with what we have now, with what we know now, but as there are more researchers, we need to be ready for other changes. So then my first question is, can you discuss the story of the book introducing us to the Taino spirituality, written by Frank Ramon Pané in 1498? Can you tell us this fascinating story of what happened? And this is also a way for the people to understand how we can not just take everything as face value.
Okay. Bueno, thank you so much for that. And I'd like to say, before I start, Turale Abadakutama, Amayaha. It's an honor to be here. And thank you for having me. And I hope I can shed a little bit of light on your already bright scope here. So Ramon Pané became basically the Bible of the Taino movement. When the Taino movement began in the United States about 33 something years ago, everybody gravitated to this book that was edited by Jose Juan Arrom. Okay, now Jose Juan Arrom was a great archaeologist, but he wasn't a linguist. All right. And he basically rearranged some of the words that Pané was using. Now, to understand what Pané brought to the table and how it got here and why there's a problem with it today, is that Pané came on Columbus's second voyage in 1493, right? And he went to live with the Macori people, the lower Macori, they used to call them the lower Macori, that were up there by La Vega in that area. And he was there with them for 2 years, and he had converted a few of those people, but they spoke a very distinct language from the main Taino trunk. We know today that they were Arawakan people as well, but they were descendants of the Archaics that had come about 6,000 years before. So, but Columbus told them, listen, I need you to learn the language, the main language of this island, which is what we call today the Taino language. So he sends him to go to Magua, El Cacicazgo de Magua, under Guarionesh. And there he's there for 4 years. And he starts recording the Taino stories. Now, the thing is, he didn't have, for example, a notepad to write everything. He had basically loose paper. So he begins to write the stories like this. Then he has to go on the side of the paper because he runs out of paper eventually. And 4 years later, Columbus comes back and says, let me have what you have, what you've written. And it's a manuscript. Now, if you read the Pané book, it says in the middle of the book, it says, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know if the stories that are in the front of the book go in the back, and if what's in the back goes in the front. Yeah. So he was clearly confused because he says the Indians do not speak in a linear fashion. That was his excuse, right? So Columbus takes the book, the manuscript, with him on the boat, going back to Spain. On the boat is Columbus's brother. Columbus's brother takes a look at the manuscript and he records some of what's in there. Columbus gets to Spain. Now, every sailor that came from the Americas, once they got to Spain, they had to stop by Pedro de Angleria, who was an Italian commissioned by the king to record all the stories of all the sailors that came from the Americas. So Pedro de Angleria, he looks at this book and it's invaluable to him because he had been picking up bits and pieces about Taino spirituality. but he doesn't, but he had never seen it in that many words. So he translates it. Now, Pané was Catalan, and he wrote his manuscript in Catalan. Pero de Angleria, he translates it into Italian, some parts of it. The book gets put away until 1571. In 1571, Ulloa, which was an Italian, is given the task of reprinting Pané's book. But the book now is already all tattered and torn, and it's breaking apart. So whatever he can pick up from what was left, he begins to write down. He finds what Bartolomé Colón's, Columbus's brother wrote down, and also what Pedro de Angleria did. And this becomes the Antiquity of the Indians that was written by Pané, right? And the book is printed. Nobody reads it. It's put away until 1890. In 1890, a Cuban translates it into Spanish. So what is the problem? Until 1750, Spanish orthography was not standard. So if somebody was from Mencia and they heard a Taino word, they would spell it the way a Mencia person would spell. But if somebody's from Catalan, or if they're from Andalusia, et cetera, they would all spell it differently. So by the time it gets into English, the spellings change even more. So all the names that we use today are all suspect. And that's a problem, and that's a problem. So this is revealed through doing language work. And most of the language work that was done on the Taino, unfortunately, was done under the assumption that the Spanish recorded everything perfectly. So that's why we have these false notions that Taino means good. There is no cognate in any Arawak language that Tai is good. That's a Spanish fabrication. So those are the problems. And today we're beginning to see that more work needs to be done.
Yeah, thank you, Jorge, for bringing all this clarity that people needs to know, because this is the bedrock of everything that we are doing today. So we are open to the new information that we will have. So now some of us, some of us know about the project that you did in these last 3 or 4 years of reconstructing this Taino language reconstruction that you call Hiwatahia, right? Mm-hmm. So can you please share how you became interested in the language, your intention, and the unexpected places this project has taken you, please?
Okay. Well, I think everybody that is involved in Taino identity, Taino spirituality, Taino culture wants to know what the words mean. So everybody's interested in language in one way or another, and I was no stranger to that. When I first started researching, before there were computers, I began writing down all the Taino words that I heard. My favorite thing to do back then, my main project, was looking for words that were Taino or possibly Taino, but were never recorded by the Spanish, right? So I began collecting a list of these. And then later on, when I started finding books like De Morici,
Magiolo.
Magiolo, everybody, because I have every book that you can imagine. I began collecting all these words and seeing where there was the differences and where there was a lot of sameness, and I had it all amassed. Now, one of the problems that I noticed early on was that all the words were nouns, and you can't revive a language with just nouns. It's impossible. And that's really interesting why these are the words that actually survived. So a lot of the words that survived were because they were recorded by the Spanish. So that tells you that the Taino language died pretty early on. It fell out of use. So there was a lot of efforts at the beginning of the movement to look for other words from other languages. And this became the main idea. But the thing was, which language were we going to get it from, right? So some people felt that Garifuna was very close to Taino. Or that Kalinago was very close to Taino. the fact of the matter is that all the languages, whether it's Taino, whether it's Garifuna, or whether it's Kalinago, they're all more closely related to Lokono than they are to each other. That's a linguistic fact. So for me, Lokono became what I would call is like la lingua franca, or not the lingua franca, like the Latin. So that's the place to go. Lokono está Arawakan. Okay, so there's a big difference between Arawak and Arawakan. Those are two different things, right? So Arawak is what the Lokono people speak. Arawakan is what Arawak-like languages speak. It's a very big, broad family. So what I did was that I started looking for the closest related languages: Lokono, Wayu, Wapishana, Baniwa, Tariana, Anyu, some Garifuna, and I tried to borrow from languages that had words that were not found in the languages that I was looking at, So that's how it began. But the problem was this: knowing that the Spanish had recorded everything in a very Spanish way. Like one of my linguist friends, for example, told me that when you look at the Taino words as they were recorded by the Spanish, it's basically Spanish. You see all these gua words. That's a Spanish thing. The correct Arawak way would be wa, and a lot of little things like this. I'm not going to bore you with all the little details, but so what I did was I created one orthography, right? I took all the hard C's of the surviving Taino words, and I turned them into K's. All the soft C's became S's. All the guas became wa. And then all the words that we borrowed from other language, we also converted them into that same orthography. And once we did that, I went by the sound, the words started falling into place, So then you find things like, for example, the word anakaona, right? Golden flower. There's no such thing, because it's not even an indigenous concept. You got to think about that. The only people that are thinking about golden flowers are Spanish people who are interested in gold, right? The closest cognate to Anacaona in other Arawakan languages, Anaconwa, which means beautiful. Now, you who introduced me to Maguana, what do people say in Maguana Anacaona? They always talk about her great beauty.
Oh, yes.
They never saw her in person, but that's what they always mention, is the great beauty. And there must be a reason why this persisted. I'm not saying that that's a fact, but I'm saying that this notion that she was so beautiful has persisted, because maybe her name was somehow related to that. And, we just started finding more and more problems with the words. When I went back and revisited Pane, that's when I got the shock of my life, right? So years ago, I heard a woman praying to Yermao, right? So Pane, there's a breakdown of all the different manifestations of Ataveira. And one of them is Yermao Apito ba 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 ba. Okay? Yermao is Catalan for brother. Okay? And what the entry, what it's really trying to say is that Ataveira has a brother whose name is Huacar, not Yermao Huacar Apito. Okay? So when you start understanding this, then you start seeing that there's a problem. For example, guabonito is a word that existed in Spain before the Spanish came to the Americas. So Pane says there's this being or spirit, whatever, called guabonito. And guabonito means a little fish in Spain. So you would think that he would say, oh, we have this word in Spain as well, when he recorded it, but he doesn't even say that. So that word guabonito is suspect. And the more we look into this, the more suspect it began. So I am part of a language project that we have now. It's actually a very big language project. And two of the people that I'm going to be working with are doing just that, looking at all these names for the very first time. One of the things that I was surprised to learn when I first started working on the Hiwatahia is that to this day, not a single real linguist has ever worked on Taino language.
Yes.
you
And
know?
this is because of this the non-survival. It is
Yeah.
tied to that, because why were we going to look into the language of people who doesn't exist? There was no interest in us.
Yeah, I mean, how are you gonna create a language, for people that are not gonna, use it? They're not here no more. So that became a very interesting fact. The only person who actually looked at Taino, which was basically to compare it to Kalinago, was Douglas Taylor. Then when you think about everybody else, like Julian Granberry, who I used to swear that was like the top linguist. He ended up being actually an archaeologist. As an archaeologist, he's fantastic, but when it comes to language, he is totally way off. And for myself, I had to come to the conclusion that because you kind of feel offended, like, wow, but I've always believed this. Ever
Yes,
since
yes,
this movement started, it's always been Yokahu. Yokahu
yes,
is the god of the Yucca.
yes,
But here's the thing. And that word Yokahu doesn't appear in Pan's original manuscript at all. And that was created by Jose Juan Arrom, and he associates Yokahu with the Yucca. The problem with that is that there are cognates in South America with the word Yokahu. There's Yolahu, Yawahu, Yolohu, and all of these mean spirit of the forest. So then how is it that ours is going to be about a yucca when everybody else's is about a forest spirit? So for me, I'm grateful that we had so many clues, that kept us going, but it's time to turn the page, because I believe that our ancestors deserve due diligence. They deserve for us to go as deep as possible in trying to find the truth.
yes,
And probably a lot of the disarray that you have in the Taino community is because we have a lot of things that are just wrong, and
yeah.
you have to have the courage to be able to change something if you find out that it's wrong.
Yes, exactly. It is like when the academics saw the distinction, and they continue repeating it, but they didn't have the courage of saying, well, we were wrong, and yes, there are people, there is culture here, there is DNA here, and yeah, there is a survival. Yes, I understand that, and this is why it is so important that we keep open to all the changes that are coming about our spirituality through the language. So, Jorge, I want to ask you one last question. What do you recommend to the younger generations? Because here we have many younger generations and people who are studying. To dig into the Taino culture and the ancestors. So, what do you recommend these people and the younger generation that want some guidance on how to go about learning of our ancestral Taino heritage?
Well, for me, it was always about knowledge. It's always about learning as much as you can and questioning everything, and young people are always very good at that anyway. But anything that, like to my Wayagua people, when I give them something, I tell them, if you don't understand something, ask me. But also ask me for the sources, I'm old. I might get something wrong. I don't know. And I don't have all the answers, but I have a lot of questions myself. Anything that I get, for example, and I don't mean to step on anybody's toes, of course, but one of the things that I learned is that the concept of burying something in the ground, it was actually more about building a cave around it, right?
Mhm.
Because it's mimicking the womb of Mother Earth, and
Exactly.
so that's what it is. Burial is a burial, and creating a cave where you're mimicking what happens, and as like our campesinos, the way they pray to whatever they're planting, they'll knock 3 times on one side and tell it its intention, and then once they harvest it, they knock 3 times on the other side and continue with the prayer and with the promise of replanting. But like I said, I'm sorry, I kind of digressed there because I'm so
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, my recommendation is like to look at the new information that's out there, especially the genetic information. Everything that we know about Taino migrations changed 2 years ago. Today, we have a
Yes.
much clearer picture of what it was, how it was that we got to the Caribbean, and how we actually went from the Saladoids to modern, to the Tainos that the Columbus encountered, and then later to us. And yeah, that's it. Just keep asking questions, and don't believe the hype. If the Tainos had all disappeared, we wouldn't be having these conversations right now. It would have been a matter of fact. But it wasn't. There's always that question, yeah, and that feeling that you have inside that keeps drawing you to this. It's very real. It's there for a reason, But I believe that Creator calls, our ancestors call us when they need us, So now that the old guard put this on the table, the new have to work it and keep it going, and that's where I'm at now. I'm trying to make sure that, that what we've done now is maintained, up to now, and that's it.
Yes. Yeah. We are here, and the younger generations bringing our heritage forward. Thank you so much, Jorge, for accepting the invitation and for bringing so much clarity to this matter. And thank you so much, so much.
Yeah, thank you for having me, IRKA. It's always a pleasure.
Yeah.
Thank you, everybody.
Yes. Can we take it, Jorge? Can we have a couple questions with you?
Sure.
Is that okay?
Yeah, no, ask me all the questions you want. I have all the answers.
Well, for both of you, but Jorge, the question of how do you, when you were talking about the language and meeting with different leaders, how does your spirituality guide that process for you, and how you show up and how you follow, I guess, your intuition, right, on which way to go and when things do need to be questioned?
Well, my spirituality, which I consider my own, because in spirituality is a personal thing, I'm guided by Cojoba, because I'm a Cojobero. I believe in the sacred medicine, and I've been working with the medicine now for about 10 years, maybe longer, and it's evolved in many ways. I've learned different ways of procuring it, different ways of using it, and how that functions with the semis and with other things that you use, things that I've learned from my Arawak brothers and sisters from South America. It's not that I'm a purist, but I really want to understand the world that my ancestors lived in, and I see that a lot of that is still here in South America. And when I dive into that world, it's so very different than like the African thing or the Christian thing, and I try to stay away from those things. Not that I have a problem with those things, but I really want to see with my soul what my heart tells me, has always been there. It's a hard concept to understand, but like, for example, here I carry my hummingbird. A hummingbird is something that is given to a person when they're on a spiritual journey. There's a process of what you have to do with that hummingbird, because that's the hummingbird that carries you across the Jaro Tucuma when you pass away. This is what our ancestors believed in. We believe that we came across that arm that you see that's called the Milky Way. That is the road back to the ancestors, and you're guided by a hummingbird. So the Piamanes, the Bejiques, they do that. And also the concept of semi. The semi, like IRKA said, is the sweetness of life, the essence of life. In South America, they still have the concept. It's called dua. It's the energy. When you put on a headdress, what you're doing is connecting the dua of your headdress with the dua of the universe around you. It's like an antenna. That's why you have certain colors and certain feathers, and each one have different spiritual levels. Putting on a headdress is not just because you want to look pretty and you want to look more Indian or whatever the hell some people put them on for. There's a reason for it, and I try to stay within that boundary. I try to follow those traditions exactly as they are. And when it comes to the medicine, I had a vision and somebody else's ceremony a long time ago. And for me, it was that every single time that I went to a peyote ceremony or an ayahuasca ceremony, there were Indians from North America, from South America, and I always felt that the Tainos are like, here, give me, but we had nothing to contribute. And I prayed that I wish that we had the cojoba. Why don't we? You know, and it came to me. Somehow or another, I learned to make it, and I've taught others how to do it, and then I've met other people who have guided me even further, you know, and that really opened up my mind and my connection to Semi, and that's where I'm at. But that's for me. Everybody has their own way of.
And that's all we wanted to know was your hot take on it. It's your Taino talk. So another question, this one for the two of you. I think Amaris posted this when you were talking about the younger generation and advice. Thank you for that question. Also, I would like to ask, how do you navigate the conversation when your family centers whiteness, not realizing their identities are indigenous? I feel like a generational curse breaker, but it is a lot of pressure when my family isn't even connected to their roots.
Yeah, but this is something that we all live, because, for example, in the Dominican Republic, in the generation of our parents, they were not still there. They were not embracing the Taino. So many of, if you didn't come from the countryside, if you are from the city and disconnected from the countryside, it is very difficult to embrace your Taino roots. Now, once you are in the countryside, that the elders have kept all these traditions from our ancestors, there is difficult. But coming from the city and people disconnected with their roots, it is a battle. It is really a battle, and I have heard many of our people that comes, to our ceremonies, talking about the same thing. How difficult it is to break that barrier, because this barrier of the identity is tied also to the religion, and so they consider that anything that we do, it is evil, So. Yes, identity, Taino identity and religion, it is a very big barrier in the cities for anyone who wants to pursue our original spirituality or our cultural aboriginal identity. What do you have to say, Jorge?
Well, for me, it all boils down to breaking generational trauma. It's the same thing. There has to come a point where, we say, no, it's like this, not like that. But you imagine what happened, right? So back in the old days, we had a lot of campesinos, like in my grandmother's time, that they were perfectly aware of their identities, or at least knowing that maybe an abuelo de ellos was Indio, or et cetera, right? But then by my mother's time, and my mother's 100 years old, by my mother's time, that began to change. What happens is you have a campesino, sends his kid to learn in the city, to the ciudades to become educated, and then this young man or woman returns to the campo with an education where his whole identity has been wiped out, because ellos no hay indio, ellos no hay esto, ni negro hay tampoco. Imagínate tú, all the things that they teach us, and then they teach their elders what is their truth, and this is how they got brainwashed, especially in the elders. But my research has shown me that up until 1890, people were still identifying as Indio, or even had Indian surnames in Quisqueya and definitely in Boriquen. So when I go to the Dominican Republic or anywhere that I've been, I never ask the elders about Indios or Tainos. I ask them, like, show me how you sing, show me how you plant, because it's the essence of these things. These words mean nothing, if you don't have the essence of it, So somebody can tell you, yeah, you're an Indian, but what does that even mean? You're Taino, but what does that mean? But if I tell you, mira, esto es yuca, esto es cassave, this is how you prepare, blah, blah, blah. Now you've learned something. Now you have something that you can pass on, something tangible. And that's what it's really about. So a lot of our parents or elders are not going to get it. And unfortunately, that's the way it is. But once you get it, make sure that when you pass it down, it stays in that way. And this is how we come back. You know, we change the narrative,
Yes.
you know.
And this is what we have done with our movement.
Mm-hmm.
So we have contributed to change the narrative.
There's 100 seeds, over 100 seeds right here that are taking that on from your contributions to both of you. So thank you both very much. I want to let you know there is a request for more talks with the both of you. So Kacike, expect a few emails.
Okay.
And I think we'll close with this question from Vic. What is your advice to those reconnecting back to their roots, but who don't have access to elders and community?
I don't know, find mentors, you know. I mean, there's a lot of people in the community, some more honest than others, I think. I think that there's a lot of people in our community, you know, kind of have gone all kinds of sideways, but there's a lot of people that haven't, a lot of good people, and you know, it's a luck of the draw finding a good mentor, but they're there, you know. And but in the meantime, the person himself should learn as much as they can. There's lots of material, you know. A lot of our truth is inside the academia. You just have to know how to sift through it and not listen to the whole "they're not here no more," you know. Gotta erase that. But there's a lot of good information there, you know. So that would be it. I know it's difficult, but it can be done.
Yeah, we have done it. Many people have done it. You can also do it.
Yeah, you too can be paroled.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you so much, Jorge, for being here with us today.
Thank you.
And thank you, everybody, all the film crew who is still here. And thank you to all of you for coming to this release and this Taino talk. We are going to close the circle with our prayer. Yeah, yo.